Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest is Bill Ayer. We originally met Bill at the Ducks Unlimited Expo in Fort Worth about 3 years ago. At that point, Slayer Calls was a small duck call company that not many people have heard of. Within 3 years, Bill and his team have amassed a large following on social media, as well as ventured into the goose and elk call markets with great success. Bill's principles of U.S. material procurement Bill's principles of USA material procurement, as well as extreme customer focus, shine through in the Slayer brand. Having their success is proof. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming the Duck Slayer himself, Mr. Bill Ayer, to the Fowl Minds podcast. Welcome to the Fowl Minds podcast.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks for inviting me.
Absolutely.
Super happy to be on it. How long have you guys been doing the podcast?
I don't know, Hayden.
Oh man. Well, we've been doing it for like 2 or 3 months, but we kind of started to do this as just something in the off season, talk about our hunts. And then also we had people that, friends of ours and stuff like that are pretty interesting. We wanted to bring on and talk to, like you and heck, I couldn't be on there, but Clayton had Tony Vandemore on.
Oh, awesome.
We've had Rusty Creasy. He manages the Coca-Cola Woods in Arkansas. We had him on, and a really good dog trainer here in Texas, James Harr. And we've had a guy from Golden Millet. I like doing a lot of habitat work. That's kind of my new hobby, I guess, in the off season. And we brought a guy on that talked to us about golden millet and habitat and stuff like that. And so Rob Sawyer, I don't know if you know who that is, but we had him on.
Name.
Yeah, so it's been really cool. It's been a lot of fun for us too. It gives us a chance to talk about duck hunting when it's not duck season,
Yeah, no. It's funny because we kind of had a long winter here in Idaho, and just cold, up and through probably about a month ago. And so I told myself, okay, just enjoy the summer. It doesn't last very long here. You got June, July, August, September, and then it starts to, dive off again. And here I am, can't wait for it to get cold and start doing some duck hunting.
Me too. It's 65 degrees here this morning where I live with the north wind blowing in June.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's a good sign. I'm hoping that means we're going to have a nice, hopefully not many days over 100 this summer, because I hate summertime.
Yeah, I enjoy it, but I sit there and just pine for us, for me, August 30th is the kickoff to elk season. And that and dove hunting is kind of the kickoff to all the good to come, and I sit there and I just pine for it. I think about it, so yeah, these podcasts are great. Fortunately, I'm in the duck call business, duck and goose call business, so we're full-fledged, manufacturing and assembling right now to get ready for the season,
Yeah.
So I can't get away from it. It keeps my mind on it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Hayden.
It's all right.
Can you tell us? Well, first, I want to hear about your first duck hunt, if you remember it, and then maybe if you could lead into what got you interested into calls, like duck calls, right? And
yeah. So I mean, my first duck hunt wasn't real glorious. I don't even know if you call it a duck hunt, but I'll give you the very first. I don't know if you'd call a coot a duck, but but my dad was a big pheasant hunter. My dad was a big blacktail deer hunter and a pheasant hunter. So from the time I could barely walk, I was, following my dad around the cornfields and asparagus fields and whatnot of Central California, pheasant hunting. And then we'd always end up back up on this levee, and there's always coots there. So he'd give me a shotgun. I don't know, I was 5, 6 years old. I was like, yeah, go ahead and shoot one. So I'd shoot coots while I was, at the end of the day, pheasant hunting. So I don't know if you'd call that duck hunting, but that was kind of my first introduction to something floating on the water to shoot. But so anyhow, fast forward, now about 10, 11 years old. And so I had a good friend, Brian Sabrani, and his dad and his two brothers were big time waterfowlers. So where I grew up, we hunted the Delta, which is all these confluences of the Sacramento River, San Joaquin River, Stanislaus. All these rivers come into the Delta, and then that feeds into the Bay of San Francisco. And so you have 2,000 miles of shoreline of tules and ponds and big open water, skinny water to hunt. And so these guys would spend all summer building, these extravagant blinds out there. And it was first come, first serve. You get your spot. The Italians had it all locked down, all the good spots for the most part. And it was almost like blind duck hunting wars. Like, you get too close to one of these Italians, they would burn down a blind type thing. And so everybody had their spots. Sobranis had their spot, and they were construction workers. But he's a superintendent for a really big construction company there in town, and so they knew how to build. So they built this big old blind. You'd pull your boat underneath it. You'd pull the camo down over it. You'd walk upstairs. The dog had a little ladder to go into the water. You get upstairs. It had like a second story where that was like the cook station, right? And that's where everything happened for food. Or if you just want to relax, then you go up to the third level. Now you're way above the tules, and 6-7 guys could shoot from up there. And so 10, 11 years old, went up there with the Sobranis, and back then it was pintails and mallards. And I watched those guys work birds and put them right down in the decoys. We were shooting them, when the feet were down 5 feet from the water, and just having a good time with the mallards and pintails. And at that point, I was like, this is what I will never not duck hunt. Like, this is like, I want to do this. So, from that time on, I was trying to go out with anybody I could, and then my other buddy and I, we bought a beat up little 12-foot aluminum boat with a 9-horse engine on it, so we can get out there and set out 5 decoys, at 11, 12 years old. My mom or my dad would drop us off and say, okay, what time you guys want us to pick you up? And we'd be like, I don't know, 3:00. And so, we're out there, it's 50-mile-an-hour winds. My buddy's got one of those old, metal coffee holder, right? Just belling water out. Things leak like a sieve, right? Like, I look back at those days, I'm like, how did we not die? Like, it was like, the stuff we would do. And then, it gets super foggy out there, like to the point you couldn't see 10 feet. And so I can't tell you how many times we were like, okay, just like get perpendicular with the bank and just go straight. And because we'd have to cross some big water, like a half mile of big water. And sure enough, you never hit where you wanted to hit. Like, literally most of the time in the fog, you do a big circle. Right. And so we'd have to sit out there until noon or 1:00 for it to rise and figure out where we were to get back. But those were all GPSs. Yeah, stories. No, we didn't have compass. We didn't have anything. Like, we didn't bring food. We brought my all-day food back then was a Slim Jim, those little Slim Jims you get at the gas station. One Slim Jim, a Snickers, and then maybe a Gatorade or a Pepsi or something. Like, I don't even think that Gatorade was a thing back then. It was like a bottle of Pepsi,
A bottle.
And that would last us all day. And we'd kill, 3 ducks, and it was like, oh my God, what a great day. We just awesome. And my buddy that I still hunt with, Wade, I hunt with him just about every time I go out, and he's the guy I used to hunt with just about every day when I was young. But we still tell those stories. It's like, how do we not die?
Yeah, I have some similar stories from back when me and my friends first started hunting, and I always, when I reflect on it, I think that taught me those types of trips and kind of going on your own and facing the danger, of, you don't think of it as really dangerous at that time. At least I don't remember, but it taught me a lot about being a man. And it also taught me, just when stuff happens, not expecting daddy to fix it, because it didn't really matter, like he's, even if my dad could help, he can't right now, so
yeah,
definitely.
No, that's totally true. Like, and then we had this my other buddy, his dad had a sailboat, and gave us this little kicker that he had on it. It was this little 9.9 horse, like 1960s engine. And that thing started once, maybe off every 10 times you try to start. Like, we had to pull that cover off and do something to it to get it to start almost every time. And, you know, we were like 4 or 5 miles out, you know, 30, 50-mile-an-hour winds, rain blowing sideways. We're out there in this boat. I'm like, how did my mom let me do this? Like,
Oh, yeah. That's what I was thinking too. We used to run the river at night with no lights. And I don't know why we would do that, but we just did. And there would be four of Clayton was there a bunch when this happened. There'd be like 3 or 4 of us in a 14-foot boat with this much from the top of the boat to the water, you know, and we're
yeah,
driving down the river in the dark. And I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, man, all it would take is one time for us to hit a log when it's over, you know. But we didn't know any better. We were having a ball, you know. And, and it was like we'd get up 3 hours earlier than we do now to go kill court or you know go maybe sometimes the same amount of ducks, but sometimes 2 ducks, you know. And it
yeah.
was just we loved it, you know.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then yeah, and then, you know, my wife and I were just talking about this, you know, because there's been a lot of high school graduations going on with nephews and family and friends. And I watched the kids, you know, graduating, and I in the back of my head, I'm like, man, our society's gotten kind of soft, you know. And not I don't want to get into any of that kind of stuff, but going back to what you were saying about making you know, a man, or making you grow up and be responsible and understanding how things work and getting yourself out of a pickle, not relying on other people. You know, it's like, yeah, you know, I have a lot to be grateful for my parents allowing me to do those things. Like my dad, I remember deer hunting, 10 years old. He's like, "You're driving." I'm like, "What?" Like, you know, we're going down the highway and he pulls
Right.
over, and it
Yeah.
was just like, "You're driving." And I'm like, "Okay." Like, what if I got hurt or something? You need to get me out of here. Like, you need to know how to drive. You know, it's
It
like,
takes a lot of, I'm not a parent myself. I'm a dog parent, which I'll let my dog get into just about anything. But
yeah,
you know, it takes what I've noticed, all my friends have kids, and it takes a lot of courage to be that a parent that, you know, but again, if you shield your kids from harm, you're not equipping them. It doesn't matter how much you think you care or whatever. If you don't allow them to out into some form of danger and learn how to navigate dangerous situations, then you're not really helping them, right? You're just setting them up for disaster in the future, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, when something goes wrong, they crumble versus figure out how to fix it, you know?
I just don't think kids these days do what we did, you know, what we did when we were kids. I know there's still a lot of kids that go duck hunting like that. Probably like more in like Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, you know, places like that where it's like a heritage, but you know, in the big cities, those kids, they don't experience those things, so they never learn, you know, which doesn't give them those valuable lessons when they're older, you know.
Yeah, yeah, totally. You know what else it gave me was appreciation for when I get into my duck boat now, and I've got a 2-year-old Yamaha engine, 4-stroke, and every time I hit that key, that thing just starts first time. And every
Uh,
time, I swear to God, I'm 52 years old, and every time that thing starts up, I'm like, oh,
oh,
that's a thing of beauty right there, right? Because in
yeah.
my mind, I'm thinking about that stupid 9.9 horse engine that I had to fricking like worry about every time I pulled the string, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And
Not
so
knocking
I got an
anybody that
appreciation for stuff now.
yeah, and there's nothing wrong with hunting with a pump shotgun or a single
Oh
shot
no, no,
shotgun,
no,
but
no.
man, how you know when I got my first automatic, you know how great that was, you know, compared to that 870. And
Yeah,
now, you know, I mean, I'm a
yeah.
gun guy, you know, I got a lot of
Hey,
guns.
I'm not embarrassed to say this. You know, I used up until 3 years ago. I used my uncle bought me a 870 when I was 10 years old for Christmas. I used that gun until 3 years ago. Then I bought a Benelli on a Feltro. Love that gun and I appreciate it. I clean it every day when I get home from hunting and keep that thing oiled up and nice and neat. But I appreciate it. But I'll tell you what, that 870 went a lot of places with me, and I still got it, and I still use it once a year just because.
It,
Yeah.
it's widely agreed upon that the 870 is the most reliable shotgun.
Oh
Uh,
man,
you know,
dude, I use that thing as an oar, you know, that stupid 9.9 inch startup. So, and then we never brought oars. Like, who would bring oars on a boat? Right. So we use our shotgun stocks as oars. I mean, that thing, I mean, I brought it to a duck club, oh, I don't know, about 10 years ago, a super fancy duck club a friend of mine invited me to. And those guys were looking at my 870, you know, they had all these beautiful guns, all these engravings and whatnot. And I had my 870 and felt a little out of place, but like, hey man, is that an antique? What is that thing? I was like, no, that's just my 870.
Awesome.
No, I've got two of them, man, and one of them I hunted with for shoot till I could save enough money to buy my first automatic, you know, and I pull it out every now and then, go dove hunting with it. But man, it's that to me, that having that automatic was just like, man, this is a Cadillac now, you know. It made me appreciate, you know, growing up duck hunting with a pump.
Yeah, yeah. I'm just not too proud. Like that's why I like you guys a lot because I like doing things the hard way. Like I still hunt public land. I still go out and, you know, get up at 2:30 in the morning to lock down a spot. And, you know, I love when guys, you know, set up by me and we're pulling birds in. And, you know, I like doing it the hard way. And I watch you guys with the airboats and going through the struggles that you go through. And it looks like you guys enjoy that part of it too, you know.
Clayton does. He loves that. I try not to do that, but somehow it still happens to me, you know, like this year I think you'll probably see it. We filmed the hunt. I don't know if this will make it in there or not, but we had a slough at our duck club in Mississippi. We had this slough that was holding, you know, a good amount of birds, and it's real muddy. I mean, you'd sink to mud to your knee when you walk in there. So our buddy Lee Michael, he said, "Man, let's take the mud boat up there and just put the mud boat in the slough, and you know, idle on over to where we're going." There's a group of trees in the middle of the slough, so we towed the boat over there that morning, and we hooked the boat up to his Polaris. We didn't even make it in the slough, and we buried that boat in that Polaris. You know, I don't know why we thought that was a good idea. So we ended up having to walk a mile probably to duck, you know, when we should have been able to just park it right. And we're on private
Yeah.
land, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't do the public land stuff as much as I used to. I still enjoy it, but I tend to go more to the private land side, but it still ain't easy, man. You know, it's still
Yeah.
it's just my luck, you know.
Yeah, we you know, going back to the question of like what got me into duck hunting, and there was a you guys aren't familiar with the Sacramento Valley in California, but it's all agriculture. It's I think they produce like 80% of the world's rice, and you got corn, you got, I mean, it's a massive, the Central Valley of California is massive agriculture. So you have 2,000 miles of these sloughs and you know, these major rivers that are coming through, and then they bleed that off for irrigation. And so in the wintertime, they get these what they call the pineapple expresses, and they got it this last year is just an abundance of water. I mean, it's like monsoon type for weeks that they can get. That's coming that, you know, the air comes out of Hawaii or Hawaii in the north, and when it collides, it's so full of moisture, and it comes in and just dumps on the Central Valley. So anyhow, uh, the yellow bypass would flood, so they had these flood basins in case the water got too high, it wouldn't break the levees or start damaging the levees of all these slough systems that they have going through the agriculture. So these big, you know, once every 10 years, this bypass floods. And when it floods, and then 1.5 million waterfowl winter in the Central Valley of California. So when this bypass floods, I mean, you literally have millions of birds just sitting in them. But you also have, I mean, we're talking a mile wide, 7 feet deep of water just rushing down through the bypass. And so, you know, our bright idea, we're like, you know, we're looking at all those ducks out there and we're like, oh my God, how do we get out there? So we would get a canoe. We have a Old Town, little 13-foot Old Town canoe. I put outriggers on it and a trolling motor. And we would go out there and we would just smash ducks, just smash them. but we also like risked our life. And I'm not telling anybody to go risk their life to kill ducks, but I'm telling you, like we did some crazy stuff. Like literally, if that canoe would have tipped over in some spots, we'd have been washed down. Trees are coming down because you got 10 years of growth in these bypasses. Now the water's rushing, just taking trees out, taking everything. So you got stuff coming down. And man, but we'd have flights of teal come over us. I'm not lying, like 500 of them. Like it sounded like a jet taking off. Just like you couldn't pick out. There were so many you couldn't pick a bird out. You just start flock shooting and it would just come raining down. But it's like I look back, I'm like, what were we thinking? This is crazy.
Yeah.
No, but those are things like to this day, like when I get up to go duck hunting, that's what gets me up. Like thinking about those times that I had, thinking that we can get out there and have another day like that, and
Yep.
thank God that we do still have days where we just crush them. Not, it's not every day, but it's we have that vision of what it could be, and that drives me to get up at 2:30 in the morning and keep going out there, right?
Yep.
Just one perfect day. And the analogy I could use, I've got buddies who surf. Like, why in the heck would you go out there and 43-degree water, put a wetsuit on, paddle your life off to maybe get a couple of good rides? And they're like, Bill, they're like, I'm telling you, until you hit the perfect wave, you'll never understand. And it's the same thing. Like they go out time after time after time. They fight other people. The wind's not right. The wave's not right. The break's not right. But when they get that one day where they get 5 to 10 just awesome rides, it keeps bringing them out there.
Yeah.
And that's how I see like duck or any hunting, but duck hunting for sure for me. Because my wife's like, "What are you doing? It's like 6 degrees out. And you're getting up at 2:30 in the morning. Are you crazy?"
That's a good analogy. It's like it's almost as if we're given the opportunity to, like it's almost like we're gifted that for a particular thing that gifted that time or moment in time where, like the first time I went out duck hunting, it was just enough to really hook me. I say just enough. It was again the perfect hunt that I described, like you're saying, like chasing that. And I've been surfing as well, but it makes me wonder, what if it was surfing, I'd be a lot more hooked on surfing, I don't know, but it's, yeah, I don't know. It was the perfect time, the first time I went duck hunting. And like you said, I'm just trying to I want to replicate that every time and be successful.
Yeah. I also, I think about I love to fish. And my dad was always good at taking me places at a young age where I caught a lot of fish. It might have just been bluegill, but I'd sit there for hours and catch hundreds of
Yeah.
bluegill. You know what I mean? It didn't take a whole lot. I just sit there and catch them. And as I got older, then it was like, took me on some really good trout fishing, right? And then sturgeon fishing, striper fishing. But most of the time it was always pretty good. And then I talked to, people and I'm like, you like fishing? No. I'm like, why not? Well, you just sit there. You don't catch anything. You just sit there and stare at your pole. And that was their experience, right? So they're not chasing anything. They're not chasing a thing that they experienced.
Yeah, you don't want to take somebody duck hunting for the first time and they'd be cold, wet, muddy, and miserable,
Yeah, and not see a duck in the air.
Yeah, they're gonna wonder. They're gonna think we're nuts. I meet a lot, like, cause for my business, that's what I do. I guide deer hunts, and I always, talk to my hunters, and they ask about me deer hunting. And I'll tell them, man, I used to be just the biggest deer hunter there ever was. I went through that time where that's what I wanted to do, and a deer hunt during the rut, and then duck hunt. Now I'm not going to go deer hunting because that means I'm going to miss a day of duck hunting.
Yeah,
And they just don't understand. They're like, man, you're just out there all cold and wet. And, I don't want to do that. And I'm like, it's just really not like that. Even if I am cold and I'm wet, if I'm seeing lots of ducks and shooting ducks, that's not even going to register in my mind that I'm wet and cold right now,
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
It's just,
I call it the sickness, man. Either people have it or they don't. And duck hunting is especially that way. Deer hunting you get away with not being 100% into it and other things. But duck hunting, you really got to love it to do it.
Mhm.
It's a year-round deal too, man. It really is. It's all year. Even if you don't have, even if you don't have private land that you have to manage and you hunt public, you still got to maintain the boats and the gear and
Yeah.
cook with the dog, and it's just, it never ends. It's a cycle, and you got to love all of it too.
Yep, I just got some tangle free cord in the mail the other day. So at some point in the next week or two, I'm going to restring all my decoys and get everything dialed in. So
I learned that the hard way this year, man. I've got a bunch. I've got to read. I've got like 8 dozen. I've got to redo and figure out how to keep them all from, because we put them on hang them on our Polarises when we drive down the road and they spin and get all tangled up. So I got to come up with a system for that. So
yeah,
I'm not sitting there untangling decoys for minutes in the morning. But do you
So
hunt? Go
good.
ahead.
No, I was just going to ask, tell us about Slayer and how it first started, and the let's hear about the creation story of Slayer, I guess, first.
yeah, I think this is a good, talking about, growing up and doing all that stuff is a good segue into this because that's kind of where Slayer came from is, talking about, decoys spinning and tangling and and so, as tinker, like we're, as I think a lot of men are tinkers, right? Like you're always tinkering with something like, how can I make this better? How can I make that better? How can I make it where they don't tangle? And so, duck hunting for 45 years, 40 years, 45, something like that. I'm always thinking about a better duck call, right? Like, how do you make a better duck call? How do you make a better goose call? How do you make a better elk call? What if it was like this? Would it sound different? Right. And so, you know, go into a little bit of my family. My grandparents were from Sicily. My grandfather was a custom furniture maker. So they landed in New York and had a bakery during the Depression. He lost the bakery, so then he drove up to the West Coast, Pittsburgh, California, and started a custom furniture business. And so I was always intrigued with that. Like I still have a lot of furniture that he made, like how well it was built, and how. And I look at his tools that he used. I'm like, how in the heck did he make this with handheld tools? Like he didn't have anything electric, basically.
Yeah.
And so I was always intrigued with that. My uncle, his family was from Italy, and so he's I think a third or fourth generation cobbler. So he built shoes, he fixed shoes, and so I spent a lot of time in his shop. My mom would drop me off there when she had to go do stuff, and I'd spend a lot of time in his shop, and he'd give me little things to work on. And then my dad was an iron worker, and so I come from a kind of a family of people that did stuff with their hands and made things and fix things and whatnot. So I kind of I think had that in my blood, and then I'm also a tinkerer, and I spent 22, 23 years in the software business, which the money was decent, but I was never in love with it, and I mean it was long days. I'd commute a couple hours a day. Sorry, dogs are chasing each other. But I had long days of just stress and whatnot. So I'd come home and start turning wood, and I really didn't want to build furniture, and I really was like, I enjoy turning wood. So what am I going to do? So obviously, waterfowl hunt is a passion. So I'm like, I'm going to start turning duck calls, and so that's kind of where it all started. So it was more of just a thing where I can just go rest my mind and hold on one second. I'm going to take these dogs out real quick.
Sure. I'm gonna let mine in, actually.
Some reason they just got a wild hair up their butt to chase each other around the house. But yeah, anyhow, where was I? So yeah, so I was like, I'll build duck calls. So that's where Slayer started, and um, so I did that for probably 5, 6 years, never really thinking about taking the company to a point where I wanted to sell them. But I'd given them to my friends and family and whoever wanted duck calls, and so people were like, "Man, these are pretty good. You should start selling them." And I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to turn my passion into into a business. And so another couple of years went by. And then I was like, you know what? I'm done with the software industry. And the guy that I work for, he's like, hey, let's take Slayer to the next level. And I was like, I don't know. Like, I saw hemmed and hawed and went to a couple shows, and people got, some pretty good reviews, and people liked the calls. And I was like, well, yeah, let's do it. And timing was right, financially for us, my wife and I, to do it. And the timing was right. I was done with the software business, and so I'm like, all right, let's do it. So for the last 2.5, 3.5 years, we got serious about it. Probably 3.5 years, got serious about it, and so let's make Slayer a brand. So that's kind of where we're at today.
How long from when you started tinkering with them to now?
Oh gosh, probably, time flies, but probably 10, 12 years.
10, 12 years, man.
Yeah.
That's cool. So were you making them out of wood or acrylic when you
Yeah, I was
started?
making it out of wood, and then I was doing acrylic also. I started with just a piece of crap lathe and tools, and like we all learned, crappy tools are are just
Yeah.
frustrating, right? So then I upgraded my lathe, upgraded my tools, and kept doing that, and things got better, things got easier. But I think, going back to that 9.9 engine, 9.9 horse 1960s engine is like, I'm like, how did I figure that? Like, people are like, dude, I didn't know you like knew how to do this stuff. I'm like, well, I really didn't. Like, I was brought up in a world where, like, I was underneath the truck with my dad every weekend. We didn't take our cars to the shop.
Yeah.
My dad figured out how to fix it. And back then you didn't have Google, you didn't have YouTube. So he looked through these big magazines and like trying to find parts, and then like trying to figure out how they're assembled. He didn't know. He just had to figure it out because we couldn't afford to take our cars in. And so he always dragged me underneath the truck with him, and I had to help him. And so I got to see how things work and how things don't work, right? Um, and so I'm like, man, why do I? And I really enjoy building stuff. And but I was also the kid who took apart everything. Like, you buy me a remote control car, I'd play with it for about 3 days, and then I want to know how it worked. So I would strip that thing down to the motherboard. I would take everything I possibly could off of it, and then I was like, what are these things? Oh, that's a diode, that's a resistor, that's a transistor, right? And oh, that's a connector, and that's where the electrical assembly hooks together. Um, and I'd just start like deassemble, assemble, deassemble, assemble, and I was always like fascinated that I can get it to work again.
Mhm.
Sometimes it never got to work again, right? I'd break a lot of stuff, and my bike too. I'd rip my bike, the bearings out down to the bare bones, and I put it back together. I do like once a week, and so I was always deconstructing, reconstructing, deconstructing, reconstructing. And that's kind of how the duck call thing came to be, is, or how I learned it was, I broke thousands of calls, that I bought. I'd sand here, I'd do this, like try to make them better, and I'd break that one. Then I started to figure out how the tone channel works, how the tone board works, how the reed works, how the exhaust works. And if you play with this, what you have to do with that. If you do something with that, what you have to do with this. And so now I'm still got a lot to learn. Like, it'll be a lifelong journey, like perfecting the art of making a duck call. But um, it's, I just keep learning more and more about the call by deconstructing it, reconstructing it, deconstructing it, reconstructing it.
Mm.
And I'm sure you do the same with your boats, right? Like your airboats, you
Mhm.
find
No,
out
you
new
go
things
hang
as you
out with
tear it apart.
Bill. You
Yeah.
need to go spend a weekend with Clayton when he's troubleshooting that airboat. Because I've done it, and I'm not a mechanic. I just hand him the tools,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
watch and ask questions.
Well,
But what's funny is that's how my life started underneath the truck with my dad, right? Is just being, hey, go grab me a 316 socket, and I'd come back with a monkey wrench. He'd be like, what the heck? What are you doing? Go grab me a socket, like, you know what I mean? So then I
Mhm.
got to learn sockets, and I got to learn wrenches, and then I'd watch what he was doing, and so through osmosis, you start learning stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
that's pretty, the stuff that you mentioned on the calls, that's actually pretty deep, and uh shows a lot of humility, about the aspects of not realizing that it would take a whole lifetime to really get to the point where you even feel like you can perfect it. But yeah, that's an interest that kind of like puts me in a whirlwind of different thoughts. That's interesting.
Clayton and I were talking about you yesterday, Bill. We met you guys, was it 2 years ago?
I think
I
3 years.
think 3 years ago when we were when Clayton and I first came together Fowl Minds was born like 10 years ago. I don't know if you knew this or not, but Clayton and some of his friends he went to school with started it when we were in college, and I was there on one of the or the maybe it was the first episode, Clayton. I don't know that y'all filmed. I was on the hunt. We hunted a really cool spot. Just had an absolute couldn't have had a better hunt. We shot 9 species of ducks, and there was like 8 of us. We limited out in like 2 hours. It was just cool. And then it kind of, Found Minds kind of evaporated. And then Clayton and I brought it back to life 3 years ago, and that's where we met you. And we were just talking about from the time that we met you 3 years ago to now, how much the Slayer brand has grown, and how really it seems like you guys are doing really good, and y'all got a bunch of different, like I saw y'all were doing elk calls now,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I don't know if we talked about that when we met you, but man, that's just really cool, how y'all are just evolving and growing. Yeah, it seems like pretty fast.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that. It's been a lot of hard work, and I don't think people really see what happens behind the scenes, but it's been a ton of, yesterday, my wife and I, we spent all day working. Elk season's kicking off here in August, and so we're ramping heavily on that. Orders are flowing in really good. And so, I mean, it's a lot of work that goes on behind it, especially when you're starting a small company. We all wear a lot of hats. I'm product development, I'm, manufacturing and assembly. I got people doing that, but I'm coordinating it and making sure everything's flowing correctly so that we have inventory in the right amounts and all that. But it's a lot of work. But, and I think the thing that I always have to keep at the forefront of my mind is that we have to produce quality products that are going to last a lifetime. Like, that goes from the furniture that my grandfather built, with his hands. That goes with the shoes that my uncle built and repaired. They both put out like high quality stuff, and they can stand behind their work. And I think that's what's helped Slayer, is that we want to put out high quality products that people, when they spend their money, they're going to get something they know that's going to be able to make them successful in the field, and it's going to last them a lifetime. And we've had people call us, say, hey, my call's not working out for me, send it back. Like, I don't like I spent thousands of dollars on duck calls, and like not every duck call is for everybody. Like, we all use our air different, we all blow duck calls different. And 80% of the people are going to be fine with a Slayer, but there might be 10-20% of the people that it just doesn't work out for. And we're like, nope, send it back, we refund their money. Like, we don't, I don't want to stick a 14-year-old kid who begged their parents for $135 to buy a duck call, or worked all summer and spent $135 on a call and not be happy with it. So I think those two things have really helped us grow, because I feel like for every one person that loves their call, they're going to go tell 10 other people.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
if they're treated right, they're treated like the way we should treat people, in a retail space. Like, you just don't get that these days. You buy it, you're stuck with it. Good luck, right? Like, that's not who we want to be.
That speaks volumes. I remember calling you about 8 months after we had met, and it was during the pandemic, and we were talking about supply chain issues, and you're like, well, everybody's freaking out about all this material and stuff, but and you may have ran into an issue later, but you're like, I don't have any issues. I get all my stuff in the USA, just
Yep.
not
Yeah.
too far away.
Yeah, and that's another thing that we're trying to keep everything in here in the States. And I just have dealt with stuff overseas, and it's just the quality's not there. And then yeah, you run into shipping issues, you run into supply. Like, so we're trying to keep everything here because we're proud to be in this United States and be Americans, and I want to give the work to Americans. I want to keep everything here for the quality, and make sure that it's top notch. So like, we don't want to be the Walmart brand of calls, right? Like we don't want to be that $10 call where you go and like, that's not us. We're kind of that middle tier to upper tier calls where you're going to get high quality stuff from us. And again, we're going to back it for a lifetime. So if you ever have a problem, just send it in.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, y'all got to figure out a way to communicate that part of the message more, because I think that I mean, y'all seem like experts at branding for sure, right? And I think typically what comes with that, and this is just my association with it, it's like typically experts of branding are just, people that realize that they can leverage off, you know, China, essentially, like Chinese goods, and just be good at branding and make money, right? And that's totally not what y'all are doing at all, right? Y'all are doing you're doing great marketing, and then not only that, you're making a quality product that, you do everything you can to get USA made stuff, and it's something you stand behind, which is, I guarantee you, nobody even, I mean, I'm assuming it says that on y'all's packages, because I don't think anybody, would even, I would never think about that with a duck call, but that's really awesome for sure.
Yeah, and and we've had accidents too, right? Where people, don't double lanyard their duck call. They don't put a strap on the insert and one on the barrel, and they lose the insert or something. And how many times did I do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I hate to say this out loud, but we'll send the person an insert for free. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just want to make it right. Like, hey, and then I coach them a little bit, like give them some words of wisdom, like, hey, there's two strings on there for a reason. One on the insert, one on the barrel. Don't do that again, right?
You're gonna have to teach me a little bit about calls, because I don't even have to worry about double stringing mine, because I take them apart so seldom that there's just like sunflower seed grit and like honey bun and everything else that just makes them stick together. So I never have to worry about the insert falling out. But my experience with duck calls, and I do like taking some stuff apart, but with duck calls, my experience has been, okay, this call sounded pretty good, right? And I was like, maybe I can improve it. And then I try to tune it, and just no experience whatsoever. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to leave it, just leave it for now, because it sounds pretty good, but I could definitely use some tips from you when it comes to taking apart those calls, and even especially like the minor tuning, right? So.
Yeah, they're finicky. I mean, you take a 3,000 off the wrong spot, call falls apart, won't work. So yeah, they're finicky. I don't advise people tuning them. Send them in, let me mess with them, or somebody that knows what they're doing. They're super touchy. Like, that's one thing I learned. The first thing is, you take something off, it's like salt, right? Like, and when you're cooking, like, you take it out, you put too much salt in, you can't take it out. So everything's got to be very, very small adjustments when you're doing something with a duck call.
Yeah. I guess the problem with that analogy is I like stuff salty, so I just go for it. I just send it.
Yeah. Take a 10 off, and you're like, "Oops, that call doesn't work anymore."
Yeah.
We were talking about quality and stuff, and what I've learned over the years, and especially since social media, is the, what everybody is on nowadays. Duck hunters are just a lot of duck hunters are a little different. You know what I mean? They're very, to me, it seems like on social media that the gear is a big deal, and they're quick to voice their opinion about what's good and what's not, right?
Yeah.
You're kind of in that business where you're at the mercy of, a couple bad apples, and you guys have a great product. The way you're taking care of people, you don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, right? It's Ford, Chevy, Dodge, right? It's we're in a space where it's the hunting community is very small. Like, if you think about it in comparison to other markets or industries, like, there's about, I don't know, what is there, 2 million duck hunters in the United States, 1.5 million, I think, that bought licenses. So it's not big. And if you think about technology and how fast a word can travel amongst that community, so it's good and bad, right? It's bad because of all the obvious reasons, but it's good because it keeps people honest, right? Like, we have to deliver a good product. We have to have a really good service so that the word remains good on us, right?
Yeah.
Yep, for sure. No doubt. You hunt with a dog up there, Bill?
What's that?
You hunt with a dog?
Oh yeah, yeah. I have a black lab. She's 6.5, super good dog, and then we have also a little wired hair Jack Russell. So.
Nice. She's still doing good at 6.5, still going
Oh
strong.
yeah, yeah. No, she's great. She's the best lab I've had. She's bred really good, and I've spent a ton of time with her, so she does a great job.
It's awesome, man.
Yeah, I couldn't
Hayden,
be happier with her.
Yeah,
Hayden,
it's
your dog just got a title, didn't he? Where you sent me a picture yesterday. He got his master hunter, and
yeah. My
Hayden's
dog
got
got
a great dog.
master hunter title yesterday. I can't take it much credit for that. I've got, a trainer. His name's James Hard Retrievers. He's done every, bred cash and trained him from, birth to now. I just do my best to maintain him without, letting him pick up too many bad habits. And
Yeah.
I'm getting better at it. That's one of my goals is this year to become more, I'm starting to read a lot about it, and I just want to be, able to correct him more, and he's pretty good. He doesn't test me as much now as he did when I first got him, but when I first got him, he's like, "Hey, who's this guy?" I'm not going to listen to him.
Yeah, and I was kind of blessed because my other dogs I did take to a trainer to get foundation work put on them, and then being here in Idaho, I took this dog to a trainer and he's not too far away, so I was able to go train with him, 2, 3 days a week. And so I would throw birds for him and get to watch him work young dogs, middle, age dogs to older dogs in their training. And he took the time to explain to me what he was doing with these dogs. And so um, I pretty much would screw my dogs up and then have to keep taking them in for tune-ups. And so now I've learned and just enough, like I'll never be claimed to be a dog trainer. I'm nothing close to dog trainer, but I think I have enough knowledge to maintain the dog and not give her too many bad habits. So,
Yeah, it's amazing what those pros can do, man. How they, you know, in 5 minutes they can fix that dog. On some stuff, it's just incredible how they think like a dog.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat.
yeah, and that's a part of duck hunting that, if we want to go back to like early ages, the thrill of the hunt got me into duck hunting, but then I uh my wife's cousin had this yellow lab and he didn't, his basically just backyard trained, and that dog was amazing. It was just one of those one out of a million dogs that just was amazing right out of the litter. And I watched that dog work, and now I'm probably in my like early 20s, probably like 19 to 20 ish. And I watched that dirt dog work. I watched its enthusiasm and how focused it was, and how much it loved duck hunting just as much as I did. And that triggered the whole dog thing for me. So once I started getting into dogs and duck hunting, that took my duck hunting sickness, if we want to call it that, to another level. So now it's like I don't even have to shoot my gun. I'll go out if it's a good hunt. I'll kill a couple birds and just let the other guy shoot while I just watch and work my dog. Like to me, that's a bigger part these days of duck hunting for me than actually killing ducks.
For sure. I'm the same way, man. To me, it just solidifies that bond you have with your dog.
Yeah.
They I feel like they trust you more, and you get more in tune with them, when you hunt together a lot.
Yeah, and it's like this dog here, gosh, she's probably, I don't know how many thousands of birds she's retrieved, but I could sit there and be bullshitting with a buddy, and all of a sudden her head whips up and looks up. I can, like, just by the way she looks at the ducks, like tweety birds, seagulls, whatever could be flying around. She'll just kind of look at it and be like, oh, not a duck, not a duck. But when it's a duck and she there's a look in her eye, and I can tell you just by looking at her, the duck's 200 yards away, or grabbed her gun, it's in our decoys.
Yeah,
You
and
Yeah.
that's something,
know what I mean?
man. I love that. It's just amazing. To
And I
think
don't,
about
Yeah, when we're hunting, sorry to cut you off, but like the birds are working in behind us, you know, and circling. I don't ever like, I'm not whipping my head around. I'm just watching my dog because she'll tell me exactly where those birds are. And then when her head whips over to here, I know they're coming down the alley and I'm like, okay, boys, get ready. You
I
know?
just think it's so cool that an animal could have the same passion for something as we can, you
Yeah.
know? Not have the same passion for you, but for the same thing that we love. I mean, it's so cool to me.
Yeah, no, that's taken the whole duck hunting thing to another. Then I lost my other lab, and um, gosh, it was 2 years before I got another lab. And quite honestly, I would go duck hunting, but it was not the same. I don't know if I'll go out today, you know. But once I got this dog at rejuvenated, just like going, and it's more for her too. Like I want to get her out there.
You owe it to them, right?
Yeah.
That's what, I was thinking about that the other day, how many days I'm gonna get to hunt this year, and I was like, "Man, I gotta hunt as much as I can." That dog, he's training every day, I owe it to him because he only have 60 days. Then what are you gonna do, you know? I mean, you snow goose hunt, we do a little bit of that, but, I mean, you're just gonna throw bumpers, you know?
Yeah. No, that the dog thing is that's definitely a passion of mine. And I take her out 3 to 5 days a week still. And, my training program is three marks and two blinds. So
Nice.
that's what I do every day. And then, if I can get people to throw the marks for me, even better. But if not, I'll just hand throw them and two marks. And I'm lucky enough, I live next to about a 3,000 acre park. Um, it's not a park. They farm grass there, hay for horses and livestock. But anyhow, I go out there and just awesome areas to work the dogs. So I could always get new areas and new blinds and stuff like that for her. So
And new setups.
At
yeah.
the pace of that first season that we filmed, I was worried I was gonna have to start teaching my dog socket sizes or something, Um, did you ever watch that episode where we were supposed to go where the wheels of the bus fell off?
Yeah. I watched all that I could. Yeah.
No.
Man, let me
Yeah.
tell you about that. Clayton's pretty calm fella, and he's like, we were working on the bus, and we were doing lots of project. He was doing lots of projects at one time. I was just there because I was like helping with what I can because I'm not a mechanic. And he's like, well, we're not taking the bus to Idaho. And I was like, really? He's like, yeah, let me show you why. And we walk over there, and it's missing the wheel, you know. So we had to divert, but we were definitely heading your direction.
Right.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it's I grew up with a lot of that stuff. Cars breaking down. My dad had an old Ford 150 three on the tree. That was our hunting rig, and gosh, that thing used to break down all the time. And so now I kind of have Vietnam flashbacks with that kind of stuff. I'm like, I don't know if I want to go
Yeah,
back to that
yeah.
style anymore.
Well,
I'm kind of glad it broke down in his house versus halfway to Idaho. Wheel fall, that would have been pretty horrible.
yeah, that we told ourselves from the get-go, we're just going to show what happens, So unfortunately, a lot of that was working on the stuff, but the episodes that we're about to start releasing, there's not much wrenching. I think maybe one little part of for our first trip that I went on, like a 10-day trip, and with just our 18-year-old cameraman and the bus and the boat. But so not a whole lot of wrenching, more duck shooting on the upcoming
Yeah,
season.
that's awesome. And I'm thinking about doing that this year is just once a week, film the hunt, good, bad, and ugly.
Yeah, man.
And, it's not going to be any special type. It'll be, super low grade type film and stuff, but just to give people a glimpse into what it looks like. Cause, I also think social media gives a false um, description of what hunting should be. And it's like I don't go out every week and just crush birds. Like I post photos when we have a good day and we have a 5-man, 6-man limit of all greenheads and stuff like that. But that's not every day for us. Like there's days like last year I went out and there was a day we didn't kill a bird. I mean, there wasn't a bird that would even look at our decoys. You know what I mean? So I'm thinking about just saying, okay, this is, and doing that each week of the season. And so people can see like what it really is like, you know, like,
Mhm.
okay, we killed 4 ducks today. Wasn't a bad day. It was a better day than sitting on the couch, right? Like, we still had a great time. And then when we crushed the birds, we crushed the birds, you know?
I think
It
that
it
happens
it
everywhere, right?
helps.
Like, go ahead.
It helps tell your story. Like for us, that first season we had was, man, we never had a TV show. We didn't really have an idea of what we were doing. We were just doing what we do. And it helps tell our story. And same with you, you're hunting in one of the best places in the country for ducks. And everybody looks at Idaho, and you can YouTube Idaho duck hunting, and see all the glory hunts, but
It's not that good.
not
So,
every, yeah, it's
it's
not every,
terrible here.
don't come. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what Ben Pierce. Do you know Ben Pierce, the hybrid guy that lives over there in Idaho?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, he was saying, yeah, he's like, no, go further west, over by Boise. He's like, oh, which that's closer to you though, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm 20 minutes from there. So,
Gotcha.
yeah, I don't know. With all this development here, it's crazy. Like where I live, I used to see hundreds of ducks every day in the wintertime flying over my house, and geese and whatnot. And this whole valley's being developed with houses and whatnot. And I think it's a good thing to talk about because I saw it happen in California and I'm seeing it happen here. It's just urban sprawl and taking away habitat
Habitat destruction.
for our animals. I mean, they're going to bypass us because there's not going to be any corn or anything for them to eat. So they're going to have to keep going south, or they'll freeze to death. So um, I'm hoping the hunting still stays good, but I've seen it over just the 10 years I've been here, year after year, declining, at the same rate that development's happening. So, development's at a 10% increase year over year. I'm seeing a decrease in ducks 10% year over year.
It happened here too, or Clayton, from Houston down to the coast is all rice belt, and right outside of Houston, there used to be thousands of acres of rice. Now it's all houses.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, we'd drive to Houston on I-10. You look on both sides of the highway, and it was rice fields full of geese. And there it's houses now and warehouses, and where I duck hunt a lot, and now the new thing is those solar farms.
Yeah.
They're putting all them solar panels, and man, that's no good for habitat. And I
Yeah.
don't know what you do to stop it, but it's just
Yeah. I mean, it's a tough deal for me because it's not about the money for me at all. It's about this heritage of hunting, and it's about carrying on the tradition of hunting for our kids and our grandkids and great
yeah,
grandkids, right? And so I think it's important to talk about. It's important to get involved with DU. It's important to get involved with Delta Waterfowl and all the organizations that you can, because at the end of the day, we really don't have time to fight these battles, but these organizations do. So I belong to them all, and we try to help them out with donations and everything that we can to help. It's only I don't know how we're gonna slow it down, but at some point it's gotta stop, or we're gonna lose our animals and in turn lose hunting.
no, I agree 100%, man. 100%. We talked about that actually, same topic quite a few podcasts. It gets brought up. It seems like it's a concern amongst most conservation minded, hunters, looking at tomorrow versus today, what waterfowl hunting is going to be like.
Yeah, it's hard to explain to the younger generation too because they haven't seen it happen, right? Like as you get older, you see it happening and you feel it. I remember my dad talking about it, and as a youngster, I'm always like, "Shut up, old man! Like, what do you know? Like, I'm sure it was good back in the '50s and '60s, but it's still good, right?" And like you don't understand it until you've seen it cycle through,
And I'm only 32 years old, and I've seen it happen already. I've seen the habitat go away, and it's just I don't know, man. Yeah, you're right. You just got to get involved, and and hopefully those organizations behind the scenes are doing things to, preserve habitat and work with our neighbors in Mexico, and, keeping everything lined up to make sure our grandkids have ducks.
Yeah, and Delta does a good job with the nesting habitat up north. So, in conjunction with Delta and DU doing work here on habitat, I think they do a lot of good work.
Man, speaking of nesting, it looks like this year we're gonna be in pretty good shape. Everything's in good shape. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've been keeping an eye on it. That's, one of those things, duck hunters, we watch, right? And so I know, we're up in the kind of the Alberta, Providence, and that's looking pretty promising. I know the Central Flyway is looking really good.
Uh, Duck hunters, it's always tomorrow, next week, next cold front, next north wind. It's always, you got to be an eternal optimist,
Yeah, yeah. I think we're better weather forecasters than the meteorologists on TV. I look
Man.
at Dop. I do. I look. I get stupid sick about this stuff. I look at the Doppler radars. I mean, I'm looking at weather probably 6, 7 days a week during duck season. Like,
I look at weather twice a day, every day, man. I'm a weather freak,
yeah,
not just because of duck hunting, but other reasons. I just constantly watching the weather.
yeah,
I learned how to read radar. I studied YouTube videos for weeks, and I can read the radar, like tornadoes and hail. Like, I taught myself how to do that just because they're always
yeah,
wrong. Yesterday they said we were gonna have 96% chance of rain here where I live, and I bought 3 pallets of grass Saturday. So I busted my butt laying that grass on Saturday, and we didn't get a drop of rain. I told my wife I could have spread this out, but I did it all in one day, and the weatherman was wrong.
yeah. It's funny. My wife doesn't even look at her phone for weather. She asks me. She's like, "Hey, what's the weather doing tomorrow? Is it gonna be cold? What's going on?"
Yeah, yeah, man. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Clayton?
Let me hear. Yeah, no, I was the boat, like I was saying, that stuff's been, I know you kind of brought it up a couple of different times, and like I was saying, that's been going really well. I think the main thing was, so I was trying to figure out, so through the years and you have a jet boat, don't you?
Yeah, it's an outboard with a jet on it.
Okay. So it's a jet drive outboard. Gotcha.
Yep.
So yeah, things have been going really well with it. I in the past I had just always paid somebody to build a motor, and I would spend all kinds of money on it, right? And then I'm just like, I figured out how to make the junkyard motors work because people were doing it in race cars. So anyways, I learned to pick my battles. I would say I think the main cause of my issues was trying to use a stock computer. So I switched to the Holley EFI stuff, so it does a lot of self tuning and makes up for my bad tuning, and that's just helped tremendously. But it was
Yeah, it's
good.
funny because I have an old '82 CJ7 Jeep, and even my pressure washer has like a EFI on it, right? And it keeps the right RPMs, keeps the right fuel mixture. And I was watching it work the other day. I was pressure washing some stuff, and I'm watching that thing work, and then I get in that darn Jeep, and I'm like, man, this thing's tuned terrible.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, so so you still have a carburetor on the Jeep?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they make like a couple companies do, but they make like a two barrel one. I think somebody even makes an EFI just for Jeeps. That pretty cool. It helps a lot. Like I said, not only the self tuning, but yeah, like you were saying, that the tuning, how it just adjusts everything. And what I think what was created a lot of misconceptions about the necessity to have all forged components in an engine. It's like, the weather and the temperature and all these different things will, especially if you run in something real high performance and you're already on the verge of, and then all of a sudden it's just hot one day and you're creating detonation in your motor, and the prop's so much louder than the engine sometimes, you can't even hear that you're causing damage to it. So yeah, sure, like the forged motors and stuff are good for something like that when you're going to be causing detonation on your engine for long periods of time. But
Yeah.
it's not really necessary when you have the new technology. It was cool. We actually got invited to, and so we called that boat the Rat Rod. So I have a couple boats, but one of them the one that we were working on in the show, we just kind of built it. Me and a friend built it from like scrap parts, and Holly invited us to be in their booth at LS Fest.
Oh,
And so
nice.
it's like like I was saying, there ended up being another airboat, not in the Holly booth, but just entered in the car show, or three of them. These guys make boats called Arrowwake, pretty cool guys. But we got to be in the booth with I was saying it was the only duck boat at LS Fest. So us right in front of the Holly booth, they're running the whole the whole deal, and we're at the booth with like 6 cars maybe, and we just got our duck boat on the ground. It's like a bunch of $100,000, $200,000 cars that are just resto mods and all these different things. And then we got our beat up duck boat with Fowl Minds, and so that was pretty cool.
That is really cool.
Yeah.
So did you guys use the airboat much last year? Or?
I did. Yeah. So we went to Mississippi. One of Hayden and I's buddy who lives over there, owns a lot of the land, was begging me to bring it to Mississippi, and I decided not to pull it. Well, I had to pull his taxidermy, all Jack's African taxidermy. He's like, I think it's like 2 animals. I went and picked it up. It was like 10 animals, and it was a big like 15-foot crate I had to load on a trailer, so I couldn't pull the boat. But yeah, I did a couple of trips. One of them we filmed. It'll be the first couple episodes of this coming season when we start releasing in July or August. But yeah, did a long trip, and it worked out great. I mean, I couldn't ask for, but I mean, I've been running now for probably close to 300 hours on the motor that's in it now without any hiccups. So
Yeah, nice.
yeah,
I've never rode an airboat. It'd be interesting.
Oh man, the first time I ever rode in one was with Clayton. He had one, or when he got one, and I was like, dude, I'll never want to be in a prop boat again,
Huh.
duck hunting.
Interesting.
And I bought one, and man, I mean, it was like game changer, But
How much water do they draft? Do you know?
you don't need water.
yeah,
No?
yeah. You don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need water for sure.
Clayton, that one I had it had a 454 HO. It didn't have a lot of horsepower. I mean, it was okay, but it was a big boat. It needed probably for the boat I had, it was an 18x8. It needed probably 500, 600 horsepower to really do it. But that boat Clayton has, man, you could drop it on pavement and drive.
It'll do it. I guarantee you, I could do close to 30 on if I was running. So we're running turbos on it now, but I could run 30 over pavement pretty easily.
Huh.
Just loaded down. It's yeah, that's what I always attribute the reason why I like airboats so much is like my parents used to, well, they still love fishing, but when we were kids, they would buy these boats and like no jack plate, no tunnel hole, nothing. And Dad, take us over there to that spot. And then we'd get stuck, and you make me and my brother get out, kick up the motor, and we pushing the boat for, I mean, probably miles as a child, not in one go, but accumulative. And it was just so devastating to be in a foot of water and lower the motor and not be able to get out. And I'm like, and then they had a house on the water too. And I remembered that distinctly. It was like 4 a.m. We just heard this loud noise. I mean, it sounded like something you'd hear out of like a World War II movie or something, like planes, And I'm like, what is that? And we walked outside, and it was an airboat. Of course, the technology's changed a lot with the propellers. Like, it's not nearly as loud. That was back in the days of wooden propellers.
Yeah.
And but yeah, it's yeah, I don't it's definitely part of it for me. It's not the only part of it for sure, but it's just going out. It's the only boat, in my opinion, for going out and really exploring an unknown area, because you don't know when you're gonna be in a situation where, I mean, so the guy we used 2 years ago, our cameraman who was still working with it, does our editing, Dan, we like took him out on the time that we blew up the airboat motor, and he like, I think I pretty much ruined him from wanting to film a duck hunt. Hayden had to promise him it was going to be easy when he went with him in Mississippi this coming season, because we were in a mud boat, and it's like, great, man, it got super far up there, but we still had to walk a quarter mile to where the ducks were landing on the dry, in the bottom of this lake feeding, right? So it's like we could have easily just pulled right up there in an airboat, no problem. Drop off all your camera gear. Of course, somebody's got to walk because you got to go and park the boat, but
Yeah.
I'd much rather drop everybody else off and
Yeah. And all your decoys and everything else.
yep.
Oh man, yeah, we had a turd of we're just it's like I think Clayton and I were both in when we were in that mud boat, like, man, wish we had the airboat because compare like going 8 miles an hour, with all this gear and people versus, you could be in the spot in 10 minutes, in that airboat. And the thing I like about an airboat is you can go where nobody, you can get where everybody else can't get, that's the thing I like about them. You can when they've got to stop here, you can keep on going,
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see it out here where I hunt. 'Cause my boat drafts about 6 to 8 inches of water comfortably, Um,
What is it like with the big rocks up there? Like, is there a lot of big rocks that are just
depending on where you, I mean, you got to be careful. There are, I call them can openers. Uh, you kind of have to know, but if you could read the water too, where they're at, how the river's hitting the rock, you can see it. So you can, once you learn to read the river a bit, you know where they're at. But they're not, where I hunt, there's not a ton of big rocks.
okay?
It's mostly gravel type stuff.
It should be fine then, yeah, because we have like a 3/8 poly on the bottom of it, and so it protects it a lot. I have seen it some videos where people are running those jet boats, jets with jet ski engines, and they tear open the side, but it hits it in an area without poly on it, right? Like actually just pierces the hull. I don't see
Yeah,
it being much issue.
my daredevil days are, the thing about the river here is you don't want to go in the river. I'll text you guys a photo of a guy that wrecked last year. But he's we're going out in the dark and he's doing 35 and runs right in the bank and folds the front third of his boat pretty much at a right angle straight up, and they went both flying out of the boat. But that happens when it's 6 degrees out and you go in the river.
Yeah, you're done.
There's a good chance you're gonna get hypothermic pretty fast and not make it.
It's pretty wide around where you live. The river's
Yeah. I mean the river's, I don't know, it could be anywhere from, I don't know, 50 yards to a couple hundred yards, 300 yards.
So y'all are probably going out after daylight, not before daylight.
Well, if I'm going to a spot that I know, I've been there, we go out in the dark. But if it's a new spot, I'm like just searching a new spot. I don't go out in the dark.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, I want to. We still want to bring it up there. I know I'm planning a trip up to like Montana area this next season, so maybe I can shoot over towards you.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Just let me know.
For sure.
Bill, appreciate you taking your time to do this, man. I know you're busy building duck calls and running the business, and that means a lot to us that you jumped on here to talk to us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you guys having me on, and I could talk this stuff all day long. So you just gotta tell me it's over, so I stop talking about it.
How's our friend Jennifer? Y'all still working together?
Oh yeah, Jen's doing great. She actually, her husband, he works wildland fires for the BLM, and so I think he's been gone for the last week and a half. So he got home this weekend. They went up to, she's down in Arizona, and they went to Sedona, and just taking a couple of days off. But no, she's been great. She's a huge part of this business. So I couldn't do it without her. So she's doing awesome.
Awesome, man. That's great. Glad to hear
sir.
that.
Well,
we're gonna have to plan some hunts in the future, man.
Yeah, let me know. Seriously,
Either get you down here to Texas and see something different, or
yeah, vice versa. Like come up to Idaho and check. You guys have hunted the snake before, haven't you?
Idaho Falls for me was the area that I went.
And you're on the snake, or?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep.
I've never been up there, man. The snake of all the places to hunt in the United States right now, the Snake River is number one on my list.
Yeah.
public land. You know, that's somewhere I wanna go check out. We're having our third child. My wife's due in August, so I'm not sure what this hunting season is gonna be like for me. I know I've got a lot of places to hunt locally, you know, but I
Yeah.
don't know how much traveling I'm gonna get to do. So,
Yeah. No, I get it, man. Little ones, but yeah, I mean, it's fun. It's different, you know. It's like anything else. It's depends on when the birds are here, and you know, and again, with everybody moving here, it's getting a lot more crowded out there. And last year was just a weird year. Like I'm definitely like I was almost depressed last year, and I truly believe it's on the development that's happening here in the valley, and birds are just happen to get displaced and move on or go somewhere else. But we had a good season. It wasn't bad. It was very up and down. You know, we got into them for 2 weeks and then nothing for 2 weeks. Got into them again for 2 weeks and then nothing. It was just kind of just bits and pieces throughout the rest of December and January.
yeah, man, that's just ducks, you know, too.
Yeah,
Weather,
yeah, yeah. And then I've been and then I talk to people who are like, that's exactly how our season was, whether it be Montana or wherever, and it's like, well, hopefully it's not the development that's going on, and maybe it's just the seasonality of it.
Hmm.
You know, you can have the habitat, the food, the water, you can have everything, but if you don't have the weather,
Yeah,
and that's the one thing we can't control is the weather. So hopefully this year we get some early fronts and how it starts pushing those birds down out of Canada.
yeah. That's the thing too, is it's the weather here. It got really cold and then it warmed up for almost a month and then it got really cold. And the snake doesn't hunt good unless everything's frozen up because here there's so many options for water. There's a bunch of gravel ponds. There's a bunch of little tributary stuff. There's my house has a pond. A lot of houses have above ground irrigation ponds. So there's a lot of options for the birds to spread out. But when everything freezes up, the river's the only thing moving, and they got to go there.
That makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah,
when we hunted in Idaho Falls there, it was like we had just missed it. I mean, actually, I think they moved a lot of birds out right the day we were shot. Like we had to drive through the front, which was an adventure, but this was pre-bus days. We rented like a 16 passenger van and pulled a mud boat with it. But the area that we were hunting, there were no boat ramps. We ended up finding one later, like pretty far out of town, but there were no boat ramps on the main river, just tributaries, and they were all frozen over. Or they're in our
yeah,
two-wheel drive van. That was a mess, right? I'm not going back to Idaho without tire chains. I know that, or an
yeah,
airboat where I don't have something where I don't need water to launch in case something like that happens again.
yeah. Yeah, that's when it's good when the launch ramp is frozen over and you got to throw salt down to get your boat out and all that.
Oh yeah,
Just launch it in the parking lot, man.
yeah.
Launch
Yeah,
your
if
airboat.
I come, that's what we'll do when it's frozen. But we just got to make sure there's no cars in the parking lot yet. We got to show up early because my brother got a brand new F-350 once. I was tuning a carburetor on or a guy was helping me tune a carburetor on one of the first boats I got, and it was at his shop and at a gravel parking lot. My brother had met me up there, right, and it was like brand new F-350. I just showered it with pebbles, right. Oh, he was upset after that one.
I'm gonna have to bring that up next time I see your brother. Like,
Oh God, I felt pretty bad about that. So,
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get on with these airboats. I have no clue what they're all about. I've seen them and obviously, but
you'll own one. If you get on one, you'll have one.
yeah,
I guarantee it.
and it's just basically a car engine with a propeller on it, right?
it has a reduction, yeah. Like I have a 238 to 1 or 2.3 to 1. So for every 2.3 turns of the motor, it turns the prop once. And it's just to slow the tip, the RPM of the propeller down because the tips, if you really don't want the propeller. I don't know what the speed is. It depends on diameter, but if you get into car engine RPMs, if you don't have a reduction, the tips of the propeller break the speed of sound and they start to vibrate and it'll shatter the propeller and all kinds of bad things. But it
There's
helps.
probably a ratio though, right? RPMs by the pitch of your blades and length of your blades. There's probably a equation that goes along with them, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there is definitely.
Yeah.
They even
Either-
have a bill where they're
I start getting interested in this. I start wanting to deconstruct it. Like, okay, like, what is that? Like, I can go down that rabbit hole pretty fast.
we can send you a video. Panther has a counter rotator. They have two props spinning different ways, and Clayton, that didn't like give you a lot more horsepower.
Well, it's 30% more thrust.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be a noise, quite a bit of a noise reduction too. Actually, 3 companies make them now. There's a belt driven counter rotator, and there's Panther makes that one, and then there's one that a guy just came out with out of Kansas, Ballistic, and they're apparently superior. They claim to support more horsepower, and they're a lot shorter. So like in the boat now, we run a belt reduction, a Century belt reduction, and it's like in order we can actually use some of like the main housing of the reduction and put a counter rotator top pulley in it, but you have to move the rigging up like something ridiculous, like 18 inches. But the Ballistic one is like you may have to move it up like 10 inches or something. They condense the layout of it, so they're pretty cool. I think you pay for it, but it's cool. Yeah, either that or we can come up there. Obviously, you're welcome to come down here and hunt.
Yeah.
Where Hayden and I went to college at, it's really good there because the King and Kennedy ranches are nearby, and there's no, those ranches can't be split up. I think Hayden probably knows the story better than me, but the King Ranch was set in their paperwork a long time ago. It doesn't get split. It's just they get dividends. Like I think it's to the point now where I don't know how many, generations or whatever, but Hayden and I had a professor that would get like a $25 check in the mail from being related to, a month, right, for being related to him. But the Mama Kennedy gave the ranch to the Catholic Church, and that's not going to be split up either. So basically it's like you can get to some good hunting stuff. It might be a 30-mile ride, but you can get out to where you don't see anybody. Like,
yeah, you won't see people.
It's definitely a protection of the habitat and that, because it's just less boats going by and different things. So
the fishing is incredible too, man. You can duck hunt in the morning, and then on your way back from the duck hunt back to the ramp, you can fish the whole way back. It's really cool.
So is this on the coast or?
Yeah.
yeah, it's got Laguna Madre. So if you look, it's just a pocket of water that runs from Corpus Christi to basically Port Isabel, or close to Brownsville. There's
Laguna Madre?
Yeah, Laguna Madre.
Laguna of the Mother?
Yeah. Mother Lagoon.
Something like that.
Yeah, it's a pretty popular area. I mean, a lot of people duck hunt it, but there's only so many places you can go, and with a boat, it's kind of one of the few places I think that haven't been inundated by airboats. Just because it's kind of intimidating. It's a vast area. Much of it doesn't have cell phone service. It's you're there, man.
That's really cool.
You're probably 30-45 minutes boat ride, or actually probably longer than that, closer to an hour boat ride from a ramp.
Yeah. Now are you running through like skinny sloughs, or are you out on the coast in the ocean?
It's like bay, and I mean it's got back lakes and sloughs and stuff like that. It's a bay, a shallow bay.
Huh. Pretty cool.
With a bunch of those big can openers in it too.
Yeah,
Thankfully, we don't have to worry about it on the boat too much, but I do try to avoid them regardless, because it won't split open the hull because that polymer, but it'll push up one side, and then you bow dart or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, I'm like with hunting and airboats too. Like, get me started, right? I'm not going to stop talking about it. So.
Cool. All right, gentlemen. Well, I appreciate it.
Thanks again.
Yeah.
Good talking to you, Bill.
All right. Reach out anytime.
Yeah, man. Take care.
Thanks, guys. Have a good
Yeah.
day.
All right.